Hello guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Mike Mathuke E and this is my programming series. So far we've been looking at concepts in programming using C++ and Python. However, because we have a lot of differences in this program, these two programming languages, that there's bound to be some differences in a way that I cannot teach both at the same time. This video is one of those scenarios where we'll be looking at pointers which occur in C++ alone. So what are pointers? Pointers are basically a memory address, right? So obviously we know that the computer stores everything in memory. When you load a program, it will store it in memory. When you're storing a variable in your program, it is being stored in memory, and that the memory we're referring to is the RAM, of course, if you look at the physical side. So in your program in C++, you can have the exact address of this memory or this variable that you've stored in memory. You can have that exact address, and that address is what we call a pointer. Okay, so this is what we'll be looking at today. For more context, the way you can think about it, if you're living in an estate, for example, you'll notice that each house has a house number, right? So let's say, for example, it's named 1 up to 10. It's an estate with 10 houses. Then it will be house 1, house 2, house 3, and so on and so forth. So that's the same way that the pointer works. So that house 1, that 1 is the pointer to that house. It is the memory address of that house. Okay, so I hope that analogy at least helps you understand what pointers are. So we'll just dive right into code so that you can see how all this works. So first of all, so before we've done this, we've used integers a lot already in our previous lessons. So let's say, for example, you have an integer var, and let's give it a value of 8. Okay, so a pointer will be the memory address of if you want the memory address of this var, a pointer, you would declare it like this: int pointer. So this int is just of course it's a type that helps the program know that we are referring to this memory because we know an integer exists in it. Okay, so we can say int pointer, let's say ptr for pointer in short. And then when you want to get the exact number here, we'll use ampersand. So this ampersand just says give me the memory address of this value. So we'll just put var, which is our variable. So this is one of the ways you can use pointers. So integer pointer equals so this is saying we have a pointer that is referring to an integer variable, and its value we can get from this memory address. So basically this and var means give me the memory address of this variable. So if we print this, so again, a pointer is always an integer. So /n as usual, and then we'll have ptr being printed out. So if I run this, you can see that we get a certain value here. So this is its memory address, right? So so as you can see, we've printed the pointer. So for this lesson, I will since we're looking at C++ specifically, I'll introduce another way that we're going to be using to print our variables, because this printf will not be sufficient for this case specifically. Now, we usually have something called std_cout, which we use to also print, and this time we don't have to specify the format like we are doing here. And then we have something called std_endline. So so basically what this is cout. Basically we want to see our variable, right? So cout, that's what it means. Just give us a variable. We want to print it out. So, and then we put our value. So we have these operators here, and then we have another operator here, and then std end line, which means end this line. It's basically replacing this new line function. So the reason I did not introduce this is because it involves classes which we have not reached. However, we kind of need it in this case so that we can start we can access values a little bit better. So I'm going to print this so you can see the values. So you can see it has printed it in a hexadecimal format. Okay. So this is still an integer. It's just that it's in hexadecimal format. Now, one thing to note here, as we're looking at this, I'm just going to delete this line. As we're looking at this, please note that all pointers are integers. You remember we have said it's a memory address. When you're looking at our house, we're looking at house number 1, house number 2, and so on and so forth. So the memory address will always be an integer. This type here will not influence the type of the pointer. So for example, if for example I change this to a float, 0.0f, and I made this a float pointer, so our pointer will still be an integer. It will not be a float in this case. It will still be an integer. Remember, we're looking at the memory address and not the actual value of that pointer. So of that variable that has been stored in that memory address, right? So if we run this, you can see we have our hexadecimal value over here. So another question you would ask yourself, so what happens if we have a pointer? Basically, we have our memory address and we want to get the value that is stored in that pointer. Okay, so what I'm going to do here, I'm going to create a new variable. So let me call it float x, and I'm going to give it the value that is stored in the pointer. So we just do something like this. So what this means is, this is called dereferencing. It's basically we have a memory address, but we want to reference what is the value actually stored in that memory address. So we do this, dereference the pointer so that we can get the original value that is stored in that memory address. And if I print x here, if I run this, you see that I get my value 8. If I make this, let's say, float with at least a decimal number value, we see that we get our 8.5 here. So that's basically what pointers are. They're just an address of memory, okay, where we store our variable, where we store our application. So even when you load an application, any application that you load, it will be stored in memory, and your OS will basically store that memory address. Okay, that's how it will know we have a program using this part of memory. Therefore, if you're loading a new program, for example, if you have, let's say we have Visual Studio running, and maybe you want to open your browser will not use the part of memory that your Visual Studio is using. Okay, so that's basically how pointers work. It's basically an address which is an integer. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've gotten to understand and learn what pointers are. We'll be using them more in depth as we continue so that you guys can be able to understand further, right? So I hope you have subscribed to the channel. I hope you've liked this video, and we'll see you in the next one.